Together,
You built the grid.
we built a new grid for programs and users. Now, I couldn't be in there all the time, so I created a program in my own image that could think like you and me. And I called him Clue.
Codified likeness utility.
That's right. And Clue, Tron, and I, we built a system where all information was free and open. It's beautiful. And then, one day, something happened. Something extraordinary. A miracle.
Hey everyone, it's Billy Rude from FIFTY8 magazine, and thank you for watching The Art of Consciousness. These films are a curation of scientific insights with the study of the unseen, which is spiritual knowledge, in order to integrate with the mastery of will to create a unified individual in consciousness and energy. By understanding the eternal masculine, which is consciousness, and the eternal feminine, which is energy, we can create a perfect union of a world of warriors who are governed by love that transcends time, dimensions, and space. Consciousness and energy means a dream with power and intent. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about involution and evolution, the void, the unfolding of life. This video will be about how we can learn what we are in a physical world and why we are in a physical world. The modern world bases its entire philosophy of life upon the reality of the visible, where the ancient world conceived the invisible to be the real. The invisible life must be superior to its physical vehicle of manifestation. This great reality, called life, cannot actually be considered a part of the marvelous universe. For matter and form can be destroyed and is ever changing, but space, by its very nature, is indestructible and forever the same. So what is space? We come from a no-time dimension, so there is no memory in a no-time dimension, because there is no past. So we come into this existence without memory. We become a biological being conditioned by the collective environment, which causes us to fear change, evolution, individuality, and the unlimited. Then beings become fearful of death and hold on to life and the chemicals of the body, which is a selfish, greedy creature. But when we close our eyes and cover our face, that is who we really are. Spirit is the invisible and is born of the void. The void is one vast nothing, yet all things potentially. The void is also called the mother, father, principle, or source. It is where consciousness, which is masculine, and energy, which is feminine, comes from. This material existence is the result of division taking place within the nature of an androgynous deity, from whose exterior nature, which is the masculine, is created the superphysical universe, and whose interior nature, which is the feminine, is divided the world of form and matter. Action and reaction are simply the interaction of the masculine and feminine parts of one universal deity. The void is self-contained, self-sufficient, and in a state of rest and no need. No thing means elemental, even thought. Like the moment of daydream, and we are not thinking about anything, and we are empty. That is experiencing the void. That is why all thought and voices in the head are just chemicals of the body, which is emotion, which is the biochemical and genetic, the personality. Not some spiritual being or higher source. The voices are your personality chemically reacting in the brain, We have just allowed to listen to these voices, instead of becoming the one who is listening to them, your divine director, your spirit. The personality is emotion and sensual, the seductive.
Is the dark side stronger?
No. But the busier, more seductive.
But how am I to know the good side from the bad?
You will know when you are calm, at peace, passive. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack.
Spirit is unemotional and blissful, in a state of being without thought. Thought is energy, like a blob that pulsates, like an amoeba that pulsates and divides and consumes itself. To those that can see thought, it appears to be goblin, demonic, and troll-like, like in Lord of the Rings. The void is the thought, and it unfolds and enfolds. Our brain then receives that thought, and the body is a garment. Our brain is our supercomputer to create from the void by collapsing energy, which are thoughts, into particle reality and matter. In the beginning, the void in its original state contained no knowledge of itself, as knowledge is an action. So in the beginning, the void contemplated itself to know itself. This act of contemplation represents a unique movement that produced a point of awareness, a knowingness of itself. This point of awareness is referred to as point zero, primary consciousness, the Holy Spirit, or higher self. The void contemplating itself created an echo of itself, an altered version of itself. This is the first time a potential is born out of the void that always was. That potential, where it contemplated itself, becomes the echo but concentrated as consciousness and energy. To keep it simple, I would describe point zero as its dynamic aspect, our Holy Spirit, our divine director. Spirit contains the primordial intent to experience all that is unknown and in a state of potentiality within the vastness of the void, which is the source and origin of the human being. We are the embodiment of the void, contemplating itself as creative intelligence of consciousness and energy. Spirit then produced a reference point of awareness that served as a mirror so it could become aware of itself. The reflection between spirit and the embodiment, which is human, is what produces an environment, a tangible plane of existence in time and space. Between those 2 points is a new reality, and the reality is called time. Time is then based on the concept that it must exist between 2 points of consciousness. So in order for spirit to exist in a level of time, it had to clothe itself in a body, a prototype that is made from that dimension of time. The exploration of the potentials of the void by spirit and the embodiments is what produce the 7 levels of consciousness and the 7 levels of time and space and frequency. The universe is divided into planes, and these 7 planes are divided from each other by the rates of vibration which pass through them. Spirit is the will and intent, the desire to know and experience these unknowns. This journey of creation down the 7 levels of consciousness and energy is called the journey of involution. The journey back to the void is called the journey of evolution. The separation from unity is the descent of the angels on the ladder of consciousness. The return to unity is the ascent of the angels upon the ladder. The descent is good, for unity then becomes expressed in diversity, but in diversity there need be no concept of separation. So this entity was all over the void but never went anywhere. The story of Logos, the void, is when the time came to create the material universe, entered a state of deep meditation, centralizing their thought power upon the 7 flower-like centers of the 7 worlds. Gradually, this life force descended from the brain, which was the great superior world, and striking these flowers one after the other, gave birth to the lower worlds. When at last this spirit fire struck the lowest center, the physical world was created, and this fire was at the base of the spine. It is like the story of Cinderella. In a faraway, long ago kingdom, Cinderella is living happily with her mother and father until her mother dies, which is the story of Sophia, or energy. Cinderella's father marries a cold, cruel woman who has 2 daughters. When the father dies, Cinderella's wicked stepmother turns her into a virtual servant in her own house. The stepmother and the 2 daughters are the lower seals of consciousness, and the fairy godmother is spirit, her divine director, and the ball is the dance of the Ida and Pingala, the feminine and masculine energies within us all. The rise of energy from the root to higher consciousness in the crown, Kundalini. The glass slipper is the pureness of spirit and the end of ego, her altered self. The great adventure for each of us is to lift the personal viewpoint to such heights in consciousness that it becomes one with the whole. Then the Holy Spirit fills the consciousness with Kundalini, and the sense delusions of sin, sickness, poverty, and death become no more. This is the great purpose of the silence, the void. The myth of the life force that came down and took upon itself worlds is found everywhere. This sending of life is symbolized as main characters or world saviors who came down into the world to suffer for man. And all these fairy tales and films tell the exact same story. Alice in Wonderland, Tron, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, Romeo and Juliet, The Wizard of Oz, The Matrix, Fight Club, Ready Player One, Adam and Eve, Isis and Osiris, Buddha, Jesus Christ, etc. All slain for the sins of the world, and their reality. Later in their stories, they rise again in energy up to the brain by Kundalini, where they all are glorified and reborn before all men in creation. They are stories of the void and the raising of energy and evolution back up to the brain, the kingdom of heaven. The universe was created out of water and floated in a great sea, the amniotic fluid. Down a ladder, the umbilical cord, came the gods. 4 rivers flowed into the new land as told in Genesis. These are the blood vessels of the umbilical cord, and science knows that all life upon this planet came out of water. In embryology, the human embryo is enveloped in water through all the primitive stages of its growth, and in it the evolution of all things. And sex did not appear upon the planet until this 3rd race, and it does not appear in the embryo until the 3rd month. In the 3rd race, for example, the Hyperborean creatures, the primitive Lemurian man, later the Atlantean, and finally the Aryan. In the story of the void and the fall of the 7 worlds of materiality of involution and back to evolution. And the world returns to source again, and it once more becomes supreme in consciousness. It will be because it withdraws the life from these 7 centers, beginning with the lowest, and returns it again to the brain. Thus the path of evolution for all living things is to raise this fire, whose descent made their manifestation in these lower worlds possible, and whose raising brings them into harmony once more with the superior worlds.